You need to pay your electricity bill, Rob.
There you go. Whenever you're ready, Chair.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this North Northants Joint Planning Committee. Just a few initial notes on housekeeping. Please note it's unfortunately still a virtual meeting. Could all viewers and those involved thank you for your patience with the proceedings, which may go a bit flaky from time to time. All speakers will be introduced by name, members, officers and public speakers prior to you speaking. The protocol for member and public participation is as follows. First, we'll hear the officers' report, then speakers in order of the list that I've been given, then a member debate, then restating the recommendation to be voted on, then obtaining a seconder and proposer for recommendation. Then we'll take a vote with Anne will be asking each member by name, and I will then state the decision resulting from the vote. Anne will take a register of all of those in attendance at the meeting now before we proceed. So if we can ask Anne to do that.
Thank you, Chair. We have councillors in attendance. Our Councillor Mike Tebbett, who is the chair for the meeting tonight, Councillor Andy Mercer, Councillor Malcolm Waters, Councillor Andrew Scarborough, Councillor Jason Smithers, Councillor David Jenny, Councillor Jan O'Hara, Councillor David Brackenbury, Councillor Tim Allabone and Councillor Anthony Dady. Officers in attendance are David Pope, who is the committee manager, myself, who's committee administrator, taking the minutes, and we also have Andrew Longley, Andrew Stopforth, Simon James, Anne Dix, Terry Begley, James Wilson, Martin Swan, Ian Smith, Samuel Humphrey, Paul Woods, Rob Harbour and Natalie Oates. Thank you. Oh, and I've just noticed that Simon Richardson has joined the meeting.
Thank you very much indeed. Are there any apologies, please?
Yes, Chair, we've received apologies from councillors Julie Brookfield, Mick Scrimshaw and Stephen North.
Thank you.
Can I, Mr. Chairman, can I add Councillor Martin Griffiths didn't think he was going to actually make it because of unitary interviews, although I noticed that Councillor Wendy Brackenbury presumably was on the same interview panel and she's obviously here. And the other person, Councillor Tom Partridge Underwood, was trying to get in earlier on but was having problems. So I'll just put that on record.
Thank you, Tim. Are there any declarations of interest from members, please? No? Excellent. If there are during the meeting, please shout. We'll look at the minutes of the meeting from our last one, please, which was the 23rd of October. I'll just go through the pages for any corrections. Page 1, 2.
Only to commend to members and members' notes the discussion on rail travel and the cost of ticketing. It's very important. But
Thank you.
it's not, however, an amendment, Chairman.
Excellent, excellent. Page 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There is one item on 7, the second paragraph down, refreshing and strengthening the evidence base, but I think that will be coming up later. And an update on the JCS initiatives, including the Rocking Forest for Life, that should be being picked up as part of the agenda items as well. And page 8. I think we're waiting at some time later for the information on the West Northamptonshire strategic plan. With that, is it your wish that I sign these as a true and correct record?
So moved, Chair.
Thank you.
Aye.
We'll assume it is, unless anyone puts their hand up and says that they're not. I think that's unanimous then. Thank you very much indeed. We'll move on to the first item, which
Chair,
is,
Councillor Daly wishes to speak.
sorry, Councillor Daly.
All right, thank you. Yes, it's just a mention on the previous minutes. I wasn't sent the previous minutes, and I can't find it anywhere on my email or anything. So, I'm abstaining from that vote. So rather than it saying it's unanimous, I don't want to approve the minutes because I haven't read them.
They're part of the papers for this evening. Have you not got those?
They're not on my papers. Mine starts with item 4.
Oh. Apologies for that.
That's all right. Don't worry. I just thought I should mention that just for clarity.
Fine. Has anyone else got an incomplete set of documents? No? No, that's good. There will be some slight changes. I'm going to take item 4 next, and then I'm going to bring in item 8, the climate action update, because we have 3 speakers there, and I don't wish them to have to stay for the whole of the meeting. So we'll go straight on to the changes to the current planning system. And I think Andrew is going to lead us on this. Yes?
Yes,
Thank you.
I'll take you through this. Just some brief comments, and then very happy to take questions. This report is seeking the views of the committee on proposals relating to 4 aspects of the planning system. First one, the changes to the standard method for assessing housing numbers. The second one, delivering first homes, and those are the new housing product that would be sold at a minimum 30% discount. And that discount would be kept in perpetuity.
Chairman, I'm sorry, but I'm having great difficulty hearing Andrew.
I'm sorry, Councillor. Is that any better?
That's much better. Thank you. I'm sorry.
Brought the microphone a little nearer. Yes, so the second element was around first homes. The third element was around supporting small and medium-sized developers, and that's essentially by raising the threshold for which affordable housing is required on developments. And the final change is around the extension of the permission in principle consent regime to enable larger developments of 10+ dwellings to benefit from the simplified procedure that provides. What I'd say is that this paper is not about the planning for the future white paper, which we're going to be reporting to the Joint Planning Committee on the 28th of October, following consideration by the individual councils. There's obviously an awful lot of material in there to go at, and I'm sure we will mention it in relation to some of our reports tonight. But the deadline for that for that consultation is the 29th of October. So we would hope to agree a response on the evening before and get it off. But we'll be excited by then on what the individual councils are saying. So the paper that we're responding to this evening has a consultation deadline of the 1st of October. So it's rather more pressing. The report before you this evening sets out our initial concerns and seeks delegated authority for me to finalise a response in consultation with the Chairman and Vice Chairman, taking account of your views this evening and also the input from the councils, including planning and housing officers, because this is, has wide-ranging implications. So the report that we've done this evening, it focuses on the new formula for calculating local housing need. It's in section 3 of the report, which would see our local housing need rise from around 1,800 dwellings per year to 3,000 dwellings per year, so it's a 65% increase. And you'll see at table 1 in the report, we've done a bit of analysis looking at the other authorities in the ARC, and it would leave Northamptonshire as having the highest figure in the ARC. And you'll note from that table that the local housing need for Northampton and Milton Keynes, 2 of the primary economic centres in the ARC, would actually decline, which is clearly nonsensical. We've set out in the report why we consider that the number, despite Northamptonshire having a very good record of delivering high levels of growth, we don't consider that this level of uplift is deliverable. And you can see that in figure 1, where we compare it with the pass rates of completions. At the height of the market, we've done about 2,100. And it's also at odds with the government's stated aims to increase housing provision in the least affordable areas. We are the most affordable place in the ARC, alongside a couple of others like Fenland and Peterborough, but we are very much the more affordable part of the ARC. And it doesn't concentrate growth on primary economic centres and the development opportunities that East West Rail and the Expressway are supposed to be creating at the heart of the ARC. So our main concerns are that without any strategic planning mechanisms in place to redistribute growth in a more logical and considered manner, there's a risk that Northamptonshire would have to address the new local housing need, both through the strategic plan, but also it would impact on 5-year supply, because next summer core strategy will be 5 years old, and the current national planning guidance indicates that we should then start measuring 5-year supply against local housing need. So while Northamptonshire is pro-growth and has delivered high rates of growth, we're recommending that we make a strong objection to the proposed new standard method. And we've set out in the report that it's the start of a technical basis for doing this, where we're trying to understand why it is that the formula gives us such an uplift. The other aspects of the consultation that I referred to are dealt with in rather less detail on pages 8 and 9 of the report. We've set out some initial concerns, and we'll amplify these following your input this evening and feedback from the partner councils. So, Chairman, I think that's all I wanted to say.
Okay.
You've got the recommendation before you.
Thank you very much. Can I just ask David for a second? I've got a big chunk of material on from the screen, which is, if you can remove it for me. Thank you very much indeed.
So your speakers, Chair.
Yeah.
Member speakers are in order, Councillor Mercer, Councillor Brackenbury, and then Councillor Jenny.
Okay, Councillor Mercer, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I've got 2 technical problems with this, this report. I should say the government's proposal, that is. The first one is that they seem to take no cognition of the likely changes in working practices and commuting patterns that will occur as a result of recovery from COVID-19. We're not going to see the same proportion of people wanting to commute to city centres, particularly down into London. Whereas this system seems to be designed to produce a plethora of extra homes in commuter belts, which may well not turn out to be what is desired by the marketplace. So I think that they should withdraw this proposal and first of all, think through and do some modelling about how the economy and transport patterns are going to change as a result of COVID-19 before they try and fix what they think is wrong. That's the first thing. The second is the idea of including a measure of affordability into the formula. So it strikes me as contradictory, as it's a feedback mechanism. If you implement what they want here, it changes affordability. So you've got a system where the inputs are dependent on the outputs. And as a mathematician, I'm always very worried about such systems because they can produce unpredictable and unstable predictions. And as a result, you can end up with doing something opposite to what you intended. And that is not surprisingly the result that we see with some areas being told to build fewer houses than they currently are planning to, which is crackers.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Brackenbury, please.
Oh, thank you, Chairman. And an interesting paper indeed. The government has decided in its documentation, which the white paper, which is up for consultation now, but only for a month, the government has decided to totally change the planning system in England and Wales. Now, I'm not proposing, Chairman, to discuss whether or not that's a particularly brilliant idea in this forum, although I know that Northamptonshire, through the JD, the Joint Planning Unit, will have a measured and sensible response to it. However, we have a mechanism which suggests to overturning the Local Town and Country Planning Act 1949 and installing a zonal system throughout the country, which would to some extent be affected by the delivery of various local plans, no doubt including our own. So I'm with them so far. The problem with that is that the devil would of course, like so many things, be in the detail. If you wanted to restrict your zoning very tightly, A, I doubt you could do it, and B, if you did do it, I think that then there would be you would have a problem, because you have the protected areas, you have the areas where development can be permitted, and you have areas which are more restricted. Where we are, if we adopted this, we would all have to make our own rulings, and then any application, if it complied with the rules set, partly by local plans, but partly by what would be the national planning policy guidance, if any application was set by that, then it would automatically be approved. Naturally, it would be very difficult to oppose any development, whether it be speculative, whether it be well thought out, or whatever. Now, I'm not suggesting we should be opposing lots of development, but we do want to have some idea about where it goes, because the point I was making, Chairman, in a previous meeting some moments ago, is that the delivery of strategic infrastructure, and no, it is not just road building, but strategic infrastructure for many other things, would be very seriously affected by that. Now, I agree with Mr. Longley that Northamptonshire has indeed got a strong record of delivering growth, and as a somewhat outlying member of the Oxford-Cambridge arc, we are welcoming delivery of growth for housing, to be sure, but also business and other opportunities, and the two must not be separated. We want to have a balanced, mixed economy up here, which gives some assistance to anybody who wishes to settle in this part of the world, that they don't have to drive all the way down to Northampton or to London or to wherever else they have to go to work. Last point, Chairman, I've rabbited on too much, but last point is that Councillor Mercer has it absolutely right. We are in a post-COVID recovery phase. I hope to God we are in a post-COVID recovery phase. We don't yet know what the long-term scope of this phase and the COVID thing may be. Certainly, in my experience, I work sometimes in the City of London. It's radically altered things. Now, we need to see how that's going to settle down in this area in terms of the density and the location of employment and indeed other businesses. It's going to take a little time, so we need to be careful. However, last point I would like to make is obviously we need to respond to the government's consultation on the white paper. We need to do it robustly and we need to do it soon. Chairman, thank you. I've gone on too long, but thank you very much for your indulgence.
Thank you, David. Councillor Jenny, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, can I add to the comments from my compatriots? The one thing that this is not doing, it's coming up with targets, which is absolutely fine as long as the targets are attainable. But there isn't the capacity in the house building industry to achieve these targets. The reason why the numbers of houses are not going up as fast as the government wants is because the major house builders are controlling the supply of their delivery. And this has not been approached at all in this paper. So I'm absolutely aghast that they haven't realised that. The Oxford-Cambridge Arc, interesting situation, because we volunteered within the Arc to provide the houses that we have established in the core spatial strategy at a faster rate in return for growth board funding. That hasn't come through. It's highly unlikely to come through as it stands at the moment. The Arc meetings are, well, I've rechristened the Oxford-Cambridge Arc the Bedford to Cambridge corridor. And I'm getting quite fed up of sitting there and listening to the Mayor of Bedford and the Mayor of Peterborough and Cambridge talking about all of the developments that are going to happen between Bedford and Cambridge. And there is no thought whatsoever for Northamptonshire. So that I find very frustrating, despite the fact that as it stands at the moment on the leaders board, because we have 4 sovereign councils, we have four voices. When it becomes the unitary, we still only have 1. So it's going to be even harder to get that message through. So we probably, in terms of planning in numbers, can provide some of these extra numbers. I'm not suggesting that we could actually get to the extra 3,000 or whatever it is that Andrew is talking about, but there is the possibility, obviously, to do better in terms of planning numbers, but it doesn't matter how many schemes get pushed through our planning management boards meetings, because the houses are just not being built by the developers. I think it's fair to say at the moment we have enough extant planning permissions in place to satisfy our numbers to 2031. So until we get greater output from the developers, we are going to struggle, and the government do not seem to grasp that problem. That's the end of my rant for today. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, David.
Councillor O'Hara, Chair.
Councillor O'Hara, please. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, Councillor Jenny, that was perfect. I think actually you've hit the nail on the head, to be honest. You kind of stole what I wanted to say, which is fantastic. But basically, developers aren't wanting to bring forward housing because the more houses they bring to the market, the less of the price is. Then they want to keep the price obviously higher. But my concern is really, you know, we worked hard on the MPPF, and you know, the changes that they're suggesting in this is going to be hard to oppose that development, and we need to really look very seriously at where these figures come from, and the fact that they really haven't taken into account the people. They're just looking at statistics which can be adjusted to get the result that you want, which is more housing built quickly. Doesn't matter what type of housing, as long as it's a box that somebody can live in, exist in. And I think really what we should be looking at is not just the figures, or the government should be looking at, is looking at a work-life balance post-COVID, as Councillor Mercer has already said. People aren't travelling as much, people aren't going to commute, we are going to be working from home more, and we need more of a balanced mix that also looks at the economy around us, and so that we have the appropriate housing, but we also have the appropriate workplaces. People aren't going to be able to work in the warehouses like they used to. You're not going to have the density of people working in warehousing. But we seem to have a lot of them along our corridor, along the A14. On the post-COVID has reduced the number of people that can access shops, but also reduced the number of people that can work in shops. And you only have to look at the commuting. You know, the public transport has lessened, the requirement for cars has increased, and small cars has increased, and the car market has changed because actually they're going after electric cars and realising people want to reduce their carbon footprint. So I think looking at these figures and trying to see that, you know, these figures are saying we've got to build all these extra houses. Where are we going to put them? How are we going to build them? What type of houses are they going to be? Are they going to be eco-friendly? Are we going to future-proof? Just can't agree that the figures, and we have to find a way forward. We have to lobby the government to make them realise that they're not looking at the bigger picture. And I would also ask, can we change our meeting, whether doable, from bring it forward a week so that we can have a discussion instead of the night before the deadline, if that's at all possible, Chair?
Thank you for that. Are there any other comments from anywhere else at this stage? I think we all agree that what is being proposed is fatally flawed, and I think we're going to rely quite heavily on Andrew to put together a robust rebuttal for this element. One suggestion I have heard is to try to put pressure on the builders, is to actually start to charge them council rent or council rates on any house that is not built after a 2-year period. After a 3-year period, you double it, and after a 4-year period, you quadruple it. That might bring forward some of the house building. At that point, I think we'll move straight through to
Councillor Mercer's hand is up.
Councillor Mercer wishes, and Councillor Jenny wished to come back. Yeah. Councillor Mercer first.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, for several years I've been badgering people to start charging council tax on extant planning consents, not just on built and occupied properties, but I would go further than that in a slightly different direction. If that consent is not built out within a deadline of, say, 3 years, then simply sterilise the site and say you can't build on that site for 20 years. And you'd be amazed how fast the developers will start building on these sites if they think they're going to lose the land, or even nationalise it at agricultural prices. You'll see them build on it very fast if they think they're going to lose money by not doing so.
Thank you, Councillor Jenny.
Sorry, Chairman, I was just putting a thumbs up to your suggestion, but in another guise, that's exactly what we're proposing for the Unitary Council as far as unoccupied properties are concerned. Not quite the same percentages, but that's what's being recommended through. And much as I agree with Councillor Mercer's suggestions, if I was the developer, I'd just dig one foundation and that would implement my planning consent. So, you know, we have got to be somewhat more subtle about it. I like your idea.
Thank you very much indeed.
Councillor Brackenbury now, Chair.
Councillor Brackenbury. You're coming back.
Sorry about this. I'm afraid you're being ambushed, Chairman, by an East Northamptonshire mafia. But yes, I mean, that idea is entertaining, but it isn't. It doesn't really work, does it? I mean, we are not in the business of nationalising land, and indeed, what we need to do is make sure that the building industry is able to meet the demands that we are setting upon them. I think Councillor Jenny pointed that out quite eloquently earlier. And the problem we have is we've got all this growth, and it isn't just here, Chairman. This is right through the country. Certainly the southern half of the entire country. So anything more or less south of Newcastle, there is an awful lot of pressure for building and for development, and the industry does not really have the capacity to deal with it. We've got to deal with it. I'm not sure that completely scrapping the way that the planning system operates and putting it into this sort of strange zonal system that is being advocated by the government, I don't think that's a good idea. I do think we need to make sure we're opposing that. But when it comes down to numbers, we need to have capacity in the industry to meet whatever numbers are being sought. Thank you, Chair.
I want to move on to the recommendation now, please. That the head of Northamptonshire JPDU recommends that the Joint Committee provides feedback on the content, which I think we've done to a certain extent, and gives the head of the JPDU, in consultation with the chairman and vice chairman, delegated authority to finalise the Joint Committee's consultation response. Can I have a proposer and a seconder, please? Andy Mercer proposed.
Councillor Jenny got in second, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed.
And Chairman, I would be most interested to see the our response to the consultation as soon as may be.
I'm sure that will happen. Can you please go through to the individual votes, please?
Thank you, Chair. Could you please indicate for, against or not voting? Councillor Mike Tebbert.
Agreed for.
Councillor Andy Mercer.
For.
Councillor Malcolm Waters.
For.
Councillor Andrew Scarborough.
For.
Councillor Jason Smithers. He's not here. I think he's gone. Councillor David Jenny.
For.
Councillor Jan O'Hara.
For, please, Anne.
Councillor David Brackenbury.
For.
Councillor Tim Allibone.
For.
Councillor Anthony Dady. That's unanimous, Chair.
So we have a unanimous decision there, and we'll move on, please, to take item 8, the climate action update. And that's in the hands, I believe, of Andrew Stockworth and Paul Woods.
Chairman, I'll make some introductory.
Oh, sorry, okay.
And then,
Apologies,
colleagues
Andrew will lead off.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I just wanted to make a few introductory points, and Andrew and Paul are available to answer detail. So the report before you provides an update on existing initiatives relating to climate change and refers to the evidence that we're going to need for the new strategic plan. Clearly, mitigation and adaptation to climate change are going to be very big issues for the strategic plan, and also the wider functions of the new council. We know that green infrastructure is going to have a very important role to play, and the report updates you on 2 strategic projects, Forest for Life and the Revitalise projects. And the good news with those is that you'll see is we've managed to secure some resources for a project officer to lead those projects, and they'll be based with the Riverine Regional Park Trust. Work on the strategic plan, as you know, is not formally commenced, but we're considering the scope of technical work required to address the 2050 zero carbon target and to consider the potential to accelerate this. We'll be looking at best practice elsewhere, and we're very interested to hear the thoughts of the Joint Planning Committee and the speakers this evening. The recommendation is simply this is a report for noting, and we'll provide further updates in due course.
Thank you very much. Are there any other comments coming from your office? You'll pick it up.
Yes.
Okay, in which case we'll move straight through to the speakers. And the first speaker, if we can bring him in from the waiting room, please, is John Padwick. Good evening, John. Can you unmute yourself, please, John? John, you're still muted. Can you unmute, please?
There we go.
That's
okay.
That's better. That's good.
3 minutes whenever you're ready, Mr. Padwick.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, councillors. I've got 3 points. I'm pleased that there's a recognition that the strategic plan needs to be strengthened, but I'm curious about what the timeline is on this. After all, this is a climate emergency. The second point is that I'm really pleased that work will be done to expedite the 2050 net zero target. I note that Kettering Borough Council passed a resolution last year to work to a target of 2030, and I'd really urge councillors and officers to work towards that. And thirdly, pleased to see that funding has been found for the Project Officer for Forests for Life and Revitalise. Is there any updates on the appointment of that Project Officer? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Padwick. Could you respond then?
Yes, yeah, very quickly. In terms of the timetable for the Joint Core Strategy, we're kicking off work in earnest. It will be the new council that obviously takes the lead on this, but we'll be commissioning technical work through the end of this year and into next year. And the climate action piece of work will be one of the first briefs that we're putting together for that. So it's definitely seen as a key part of the plan going forward. The appointments to the post, I know there are interviews taking place this week, and I think we've found somebody good for the post, but I can't update you more than that because I don't know when the offer's been made and whether it's been accepted or not. But it's, again, should be in place fairly soon, fingers crossed. And sorry, John, I didn't note the second point you made.
Yeah, the second point was that I was really pleased that work is going to be done to expedite the 2050 net zero target. I was just noting really that Kettering passed a resolution last year to work to a target of 2030. So really, it sort of backs up the move forward.
So yes, certainly that will be part of the work that we need to do, is looking at what is achievable and what is realistic, because the plan has got to be evidence-based. So we'll be using that work to inform the recommendations to members as to how ambitious Northamptonshire can be.
Right.
Thank you very much for your contribution, John.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you, Mr. Padwick. I'll pop you back in the waiting room.
And can you bring Dell in, please?
On his way, Chair.
Welcome, Mr. Dell. Can you unmute yourself, please?
Hi. Can you hear me?
Can indeed. Whenever you're ready, Mr. Dell, 3 minutes.
Thank you, councillors and officers. From the report from the 23rd of October 2019, the JCS is considered to provide a robust policy basis for adaptation and mitigation to climate change consistent with national legislation and policy at the time it was prepared. It's obviously now out of date. It talks about a 2050 net zero target, which at the moment the UK government is not set to meet. But why do we have to aim for 2050 when both Kettering and Corby Borough Councils have set net zero targets of 2030 in their climate emergency declarations? And with the move to the unitary next year, we should be aiming to do better than the UK government target. I live in Kettering, and I have seen that my borough council has seemingly made minimal progress on the promises made in their Climate Change Actions and Interventions report from the 16th of October last year. To run through a couple of things on the list, the promised electric vehicle charging points are currently electric vehicle parking spaces, as the chargers themselves are still not to be installed nearly 4 months later. Not mowing verges is great for wildflowers and pollinators, but it's literally action through inaction. And I welcomed the announcement of the Government Emergency Active Travel Funding, but the Tranche 2 funding schemes put forward seem to be disregarding the near 2,000 suggestions from the public on the Commonplace survey. Now, as a campaigner for Save Weekly Hall Wood, it strikes me that if Kettering Borough Council was serious about their climate emergency declaration, they surely shouldn't even be considering allowing the destruction of 40,000 square metres of woodland and wildflower meadow. And all of this is from Kettering Borough Council, who did actually declare a climate emergency. I read with interest this report that, to sum up, talks about 2 stalled projects in Rockingham Forest and the River Oise, some maps that have been made, and some things that could be done. And that's it. Nearly a year has passed from the last report, and that is it. I'm sure I don't need to remind you of the urgency of the climate emergency and the definition of the word emergency. I call for a citizens' assembly to be formed to move this issue forward, as it seems that the climate emergency is not being treated as such. This is not an outrageous idea. Successful citizens' assemblies have already been completed in Camden, Croydon, Newham, Brent, Leeds and Oxford, among others, and have been announced in Lambeth, Jersey, Sheffield and Devon. I believe a randomly selected representative group of Northamptonshire citizens, given the training and access to experts within the context of a citizens' assembly, will be able to move the issue of the climate emergency forward. Has this been considered? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dell. Just give Mr.
Was there any response to that?
There will be in a second.
Yes, I mean, the issue about zero carbon targets, I repeat what I said in response to Mr. Pavlik. It's the strategic plan has to be evidence-based, and that's why we need to do the technical work to see what is feasible. So we'll be looking at best practice across the country. We are aware of some places that, based on evidence, such as Manchester, have come up with more ambitious targets, and we'll certainly be exploring those, and it will be for members to decide whether those are achievable. Your other issues in relation to citizens' assembly, yes, clearly that is something for members to consider whether that would be a useful part of the consultation process, either on the strategic plan or outside of that plan. But yeah, very interesting idea, and I have seen some of the evidence of that working elsewhere.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank
you,
much,
Mr. Dell. And our next final speaker is Mr. Lewis Kraser, if I pronounced it correctly. Good evening. Can you please unmute yourself?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, 3 minutes whenever you're ready, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you, councillors and officers. Having read the report, it's paying lip service to the declaration that both Kettering Borough Council and Corby Borough Council made to declare a climate emergency last year. It has, as the previous speaker, Mr. Dell, said, it's saying things that, like, nice little things that have been done, which of course is great. We need to carry that up, but it's mainly things that we could do. It needs to be, we need to have more ambitious targets to take this climate emergency seriously. Obviously, as also a campaigner in the Save Weekly Hall Wood campaign, it's unacceptable that this council and this planning authority would be considering the destruction of wild woodland in a climate emergency to make place for some warehouses. It's unacceptable that we should be considering that, and so I think that we should call for more ambitious targets and for actually deliver on the targets we've already put ourselves to. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ask Mr. Longley to respond.
Well, in similar fashion, we will be commissioning work looking at what is a realistic deliverable target for Northamptonshire, recognising the imperative of taking action, as the various speakers have seen. So we'll certainly bring back an update to the next committee on the thinking in relation to that brief.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you for your contribution, Mr. Grayson. We go straight through to the recommendation, unless there's any comments coming from any of the members that are here.
Councillor Scarborough, Chair.
Councillor Scarborough.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Chairman. I'm afraid, I know this is a note item, but I really do have to echo the comments of a number of our speakers from the public. It's terribly disappointing to read a paper on environmental issues, climate action update, in which the key word is stalled. It appears a number of times, and it also suggests that many of the things that are being tried are minor bolt-ons to the big picture of delivering housing and economic growth. That should not be so, and I think what the speakers had to say had much merit. The point that was well made, I think, as well, about the things that we're thinking that perhaps we possibly could do. A really good example of that is para 3.8, which refers to potential cycle routes linking the growth towns of Wellingborough, Kettering and Corby. Now, we all know that the performance of the Highway Authority in respect of inter-community cycle and pedestrian routes is appalling. Some boroughs and districts have done very good work in this area, in those areas under their control, but those routes stop as soon as you get to the position where it requires the County Council and the Highway Authority. I will merely quote the alleged cycle route from Wellingborough to Findon, which is for all practical purposes impassable. In the town of Wellingborough, there is a good network of cycle routes. As soon as you get to the edge of the town, there is nothing. Read in the paper today about children being encouraged to cycle or scoot to school. Tell that to the parents of Urchester, whose children go to Wollaston School along an incredibly dangerous piece of road, where Wellingborough Borough Council has been arguing for dedicated and segregated cycle route for many, many, many years. This is a deeply disappointing paper. But what I think it does, frankly, is tell us what the time is, and the time is that we are not doing what we should be doing around climate change action. And I think the speakers said it exactly right. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Scarborough. Any other speakers, please?
Councillor O'Hara, Chair.
Councillor O'Hara.
Thank you, Chair. I find this part of the paper quite frightening because we haven't done anything. What we've done is try to reignite what we should have been doing years ago, and the government's given us some funding because we've got a climate emergency, but it shouldn't take that. It should, people now realise that to cut costs, cut NHS costs, is to improve people's health and well-being. How do you improve people's health and well-being? Develop the right houses with the right open spaces, which means that you need to look after our woodlands, you need to look after our pathways, you need to look after our rivers. And that is imperative in today's world. We don't do that, we will not exist. It doesn't matter how many developers you've got sitting there on land banking. If they don't develop the right houses and change how they develop those houses, then we may not even bother considering this report, because this is more important than the infrastructure we're thinking about, because this should be part of the infrastructure. Developing and looking after our open spaces is imperative. We already had that in terms of looking after visual, what was it called? Visual amenities. So I think that really we need to improve this in terms of saying that we are going to look after our woodlands, what we've got now, and add to them. and I don't know how we can do that, but we need to do it, and we need to do it now. There shouldn't be a target of 2030 or 2040 or 2050. We need to do it now because now. Thank you.
Any other comments from around the table? And Anthony Daly, Councillor Anthony Daly.
Yes, yeah, I'd like to just echo that last comment, really. One thing we sometimes see in government is quite grand plans with a target quite a long way in the future. And so it's very easy to put it off and not do anything about it. What would be a lot better is to have smaller goals quite near in the future, and so that we know we're actually achieving things rather than, as I say, putting things off and not achieving what we want to.
Thank you, Councillor Daly. I think the conclusion from this is if it was a school report, could do better would be the comment that's on there. So I think we'll note the report. I don't think we need to take a vote on that, do we, Anne? Since it's only
no, Chair, you don't need to vote on a report that is just for noting, no, because there is no decision.
Thank you very much. I just wanted clarification of that before I moved on to the next item. So I would just ask that we, at our next meeting, or possibly the one following, we have a further update, which will include the appointment of someone and identifying exactly what is being done in the different areas that are real steps forward. Thank you for that. We'll move on now to item 5. Andrew, are you leading on this one?
Give me a moment. Oh yes, me again.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. Councillors, yes, this is an update on the place shaping SPD. It seeks agreement for a revised approach to progressing local design guidance. We're acutely aware that a lot of time and effort has gone into the current SPD, and that we've been ahead of the game in addressing issues such as connectivity and health and wellbeing that have now come through very strongly in national guidance. However, as part of our work looking at what policy guidance the new authority is going to need going forward, we don't consider that the SPD in its current form will be good to take it forward, will be good use of resources. And this is because, as set out in the report, we've now got a lot of new national policy and guidance. The government's really clicked into gear in terms of producing material that it wants to form the overarching national framework for design policy. And that guidance, which we itemise in paragraph 3.1 of the report, now covers most of the general design issues that we were covering off in the SPD. Secondly, we've got a new version of Building for Life, which is now called Building for a Healthy Life, which was published in July. And that provides a robust tool for putting design principles into practice. We've used it in Northamptonshire as an assessment tool for a number of years, and at the design seminar next week, members will be getting an update on the latest monitoring using that. The new version of that is called Building for a Healthy Life, and it embeds more of the issues that we were covering in the SPD around health and wellbeing. The value of that document is particularly that it's endorsed by a wide range of partners, including Homes England, who are going to be insisting on its use in affordable housing schemes that it is funding, and also the Home Builder Federation that represents a lot of the big house builders. So it's a very well recognised standard industry tool that we've been using for some time, and we think it's now much better and more holistic in its approach. And then finally, the third major shift, I knew I'd come to talk about the white paper at some point, but as we set out in the report, it's very clear from the white paper that the the government's desire is that local planning authorities should build on the national guidance rather than replicating it. And we should do so by producing locally specific design guides and codes that reflect local character and involve local stakeholders. And our recommendation is really that that's where our design resources should be focused. So, Chairman, in short, we're saying that the current draft SPD no longer aligns with the government's thinking, as it duplicates elements of national guidance and doesn't provide sufficient local detail. And the proposal that you've got in the report is that we roll out the Building for a Healthy Life tool as the main design tool for Northamptonshire, and that we use the locally specific material that members and officers have worked on in the current SPD and take that forward in a suite of other local design guidance. So issues such as street trees, where a lot of work and thought was put into that element, that can be taken forward separately, and we'll be making sure that none of the good work that's been done on developing those local issues is lost as we go forward. The design briefing for Joint Planning Committee members on the 10th of September, so same time next week, will be an opportunity to discuss this revised approach more with our design manager, Natalie Oates, who's also on this call if members have got immediate queries. And also Dr. Stefan Kruskowski, who's the main author of the Building for a Healthy Life and who knows Northamptonshire very well. He's actually undertaken the most recent Building for Life assessments of completed developments for us, and so he'll be able to update you on those. So the recommendations are that you agree that we change tack and that we encourage you to attend the briefing on the 10th of September. So, Chairman, that's all I wish to say.
Okay.
And we're happy to take questions.
Thank you. Any comments from the floor at this
Councillors
stage?
Mercer and then Jenny, Chair.
Councillor Mercer.
Thank you, Chair. It seems to me that we've got a problem here. The first one is that SPDs are merely supplementary and they are guidance. They don't carry strong weight. I've known many occasions in planning management committees where we have used the recommendations or policies in SPDs only to have inspectors overrule them, saying they're just supplementary and they don't give them much weight. That's the first problem. The second is the government seems determined that it shall control policy on planning, full stop. Anything that comes locally is going to be frowned on. I get a very strong impression, despite what's been said in the consultation. And I can't help feeling that if anything genuinely distinctive is put into a local SPD, it will be challenged every inch of the way through planning appeals at all stages. So my personal feeling is that we would be well advised to put on hold the whole process of producing a local SPD until we get a clear steer whether the government is going to allow weight to be applied to them. Because just saying that they prefer you to stick to local things doesn't mean they're actually going to allow planning decisions to be taken on the basis of local SPDs. My personal gut feel is that the inspectorate will give little weight to them as they have done in the past. Sorry, I'm so pessimistic.
Thank you, Councillor Mercer.
Chair, just before we continue, we've actually lost the committee administrator.
Sorry?
We've lost the committee administrator.
Have we?
She's got rid of the Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
There she is, back in
My connection is not good. It keeps disconnected. I can do the minutes from the recording.
Okay.
Hear me? Yeah, just carry on because I can rely on the recording.
Can you hear us okay?
Yeah.
Now, yeah, it's very intermittent, but don't worry about it because I'll rely on the recording if I miss anything.
Thank you very much indeed.
Councillor
Jenny, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Aren't we lucky in Northamptonshire to be ahead of the game yet again? I can remember that a very long night in Corby when we were arguing for increasing the spatial standards of housing, and the only we were threatening to push it through by an SPD, and eventually the government caught up with us. I think this situation is happening again. The work that's been done by Andrew and his team has been absolutely first class as far as standards are concerned. And I share Councillor Mercer's view that if we are not careful, we'll be doubling up, and we will just be ignored on that. Whereas if we get it into the national documentation, we can't be ignored, and developers will have to comply with all of the standards throughout the whole of the country, or they won't be able to build. And that's contrary to what the government wants as well. So, and I'm sure that the unitary council, as it comes into being, can find plenty of things for Andrew and his team to be doing, rather than wasting time on stuff that is going to become abortive. So I'm absolutely totally in support of this.
Excellent. Andrew, would you like to come back?
Just on the one point, I think Councillor Mercer talking about the government wanting to control every aspect of this. I think when we obviously we'll discuss the white paper next time round, but what the government is seeking to do is to do away with development management policies from local plans and cover those off through the national planning guidance, but to really put the onus on local authorities, local planning authorities and neighbourhood planning bodies to come up with that local design guidance. So I think the direction of travel is that local guidance will have more traction as long as we progress it in a way that is consistent with the national guidance. And that's what we're saying at the moment. What we were doing while it was ahead of the game's changed, and we now need to make sure that we come up with the right documents. And that will, for instance, involve putting time and resource into master planning of some of the new urban extensions, potentially getting upstream of landowners and developers and making sure that locally you're setting out the standards and the form of development that you want to see.
Thank you, Andrew.
Councillor Brackenbury, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Brackenbury.
Thank you again, Chairman. And I do note the comments that Andrew just made in response to Andy and David's earlier remarks. I mean, quite obviously, the SPD is now out of date, and it's true to say that in some ways it was a bit of a pioneering document. So I completely agree with the recommendation. However, we need to make sure that the design principles and the actual quality of development, the location of development, is reflected in emerging national planning policy guidance. I'm very concerned that we have, and our next meeting is on the, was it the 28th of October, I believe. I'm just looking on the agenda. Yeah, it's 28th of October. We need to have responded to, actually, if I'm correct, the response has to be in by the 1st of October, if I'm right. Could you just confirm that, Andrew?
There's two consultations.
Two consultations.
For the white paper, for the national planning policy white paper.
The white paper is the 29th of October, and
oh, thank you very much. Good. Okay. It is. I think we need to focus all our guns as 4 authorities and as one emerging authority and as the Joint Planning Committee, which we have worked successfully, very successfully over many years. And one thing I think is something we don't shout about enough is that Northamptonshire has had a joint planning committee and a joint planning unit very successfully in place for I don't know how many years. I chaired it about 5 years ago, and I know that I was, you know, it was quite long established then. This is a body which can really reflect some of the issues that surround Northamptonshire. Not, you know, we all have our parochial discussions about this place or that place or this piece of development or that piece of development, and we're all going into unitary authority in about 7 or 8 months' time anyway. But I think that this authority, this committee, excuse me, Chairman, has been a tremendous success. It is the response of Northamptonshire to the government's white paper, which is going to be very, very important. Obviously, it is apparently national planning policy guidance emerging through this change and through general national planning policy guidance that there is a great deal more housing development that is wanted to be in this sort of vicinity. I mean, I'm talking about the Oxford and Cambridge arc, and we are far away from it, but we are involved with it. We need to always watch that. You know, I was listening with great interest to the public speakers on the agenda item recently, and of course, I have great sympathy with all that they say. And I agree with them that we need to make sure that we have sustainable development in the right place in Northamptonshire, and that as far as possible, we have some stewardship as councillors, as an emerging unitary authority, that we have some stewardship over where it is so that we can plan for the future in a sensible and intelligent way. Anyway, thank you, Chairman. I think that's really what I needed to say.
Thank you, Councillor Brackenbury. I think we're probably all agreed that having an SPD is a good idea, but we've got to find ways of actually giving it teeth and making sure that it is actually implemented and utilised by all of the developers. And I think that's going to be one of the major challenges. I just want to pick up briefly on a comment that was made earlier, that having our meeting on the 28th and the document has got to be in on the 29th, would be better if we have a little bit more time before then, and perhaps to just devote a meeting to just this one item when all of the individual authorities have, if you like, produced their comments and forwarded them through to the JPU so that we can finalise them and debate the individual elements that come up and agree them. I'm not sure if that is possible. I'm just going to ask Andrew to see if it is possible to make, if you like, that meeting. We'll have other things to be talking about on the 28th, and I think this is the planning document is of such critical importance that we need to try to have a meeting devoted solely to it. If are the rest of the members in agreement with that as a potential, as a possibility?
Yes, yes, I am, sir.
Excellent, thank you. In which case we'll move to the recommendations, and this we will
Still
need.
got Councillor O'Hara to go, Chair.
Councillor O'Hara, you can come back in a little while, please. Very quick.
Just to say, Chair, can we do it some way in terms of, I think somebody said something about the national documentation, so that it's included in that, but also I think a way forward is to have an input in terms of within the building regs, when you think about building for healthy life, with the work that's been done by Sue and Stefan, it's been exemplary, so why don't we get it into national recognition?
I think a lot of things need to go into the building regs rather than just the nice design guide suggest. We'll need to be working on that, or the new authority, I think, will need to start lobbying strongly for that sort of area of activity to make sure that almost we get back to what we did have in the core spatial strategy before in terms of energy, but we had it all taken out by the planning inspector, which was very regrettable. I'm going to move on to the recommendation so that we can...
We just had a hand go up from Councillor Jenny now, Chair.
Yes, just a quickie to say that I'm picking this up with the shadow executive.
Excellent.
It's already in hand.
Thank you, Councillor Jenny. The recommendation is that we note the contents of the report and agree the proposed approach to provide local design guidance, and that we are encouraged to join the briefing on the 10th of September in respect of the monitoring of design quality in North Northampton, the potential of building for a healthy life tool. And I think we do need to have a vote on this. It is such a critical recommendation. Can we please take a vote on this with us? Yeah. A proposer and seconder for the recommendation, please.
I'd propose it, Chairman, although I have to regrettably apologise for the 10th of September. But I'd be very interested to see the outcome, but I would be happy to propose, Chair.
Seconder, please.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Jan. We'll go to the vote then, please, Anne.
Right, I don't know how long this connection is going to hold out, but can you indicate for, against or not voting? Councillor Tebbert?
For.
Councillor Mercer? Councillor Mercer?
For.
Councillor Waters?
For.
Councillor Scarborough?
For.
Councillor Jenny? Jenny?
Anthony, can you put your hand up if you're for it, please? You're breaking up. Voice
Yeah. Councillor O'Hara?
For.
Councillor Allibone?
For.
Councillor Dady?
For.
That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. We'll move straight on to item 6.
Chair, for the record.
Sorry, Councillor Brackenbury.
I did not vote. I was not asked to vote.
You didn't? Well, Councillor...
I vote for, but I was not asked to vote,
Okay.
so I'm not quite sure it's the list was correct. I know that there's been some communication difficulties.
Yeah, it can. Yeah,
Chair,
Councillor Brackenbury, I'll add that to your...
Thank you.
Chair, can I make a point? Earlier on in this meeting, we had a discussion about internet backbone, and I pointed out that we didn't have sufficient capacity and that councillors and meetings were dropping out. You've just seen the proof that I was correct.
Something is amiss, certainly, whether it's the server or whether it's the backbone. I'm not going to debate.
Can we move on?
Item 6, North Northamptonshire Economic Prospectus. I think this is Simon going to lead us through this.
It is, Chair. Thank you very much. And I'm conscious of time, and I've got the last two reports on the agenda, so I will endeavour to be as quick as possible. So, yeah, in terms of the economic prospectus, the purpose of the report is for the Joint Planning Committee to endorse the North Northamptonshire Economic Prospectus. The background to the prospectus is set out in section 2 of the report, and obviously members will be familiar with the North Northamptonshire investment framework that's been touched on at the briefing, the NNIF, which was endorsed by the Joint Delivery Committee in June 2019. And as para 2.2 of the report sets out, the NNIF highlighted the need to prepare an economic prospectus to highlight North Northampton's potential and to focus attention on areas where a concerted effort is required to realise growth priorities. The prospectus is provided at Appendix 1 of the report, and Section 3 of the report provides an overview of it. We circulated the prospectus by email to all members of the Joint Planning and Joint Delivery Committees on the 1st of July, and I actually spotted a typo in para 3.5 of the report where it says Joint Development Committee, but that is the Joint Delivery Committee. And the Joint Planning Committee is asked to endorse the document to strengthen the weight that can be given to it. As explained in paragraph 3.1 of the report, the prospectus isn't a new plan, but it draws together existing evidence and strategies. And when we were developing the prospectus, we worked closely with planning and economic development officers in the partner councils and colleagues at SEMLEP in drafting the document. And the case studies in the document were actually provided through contacts at the councils. Now, the impact of COVID-19 has been frequently referenced by members of the committee tonight. And para 3.2 of the report, it explains that the prospectus provides a long-term view of the economic potential of the area, and it does not address the immediate economic shock created by COVID-19. Now, work that is ongoing to support economic recovery is referenced in para 3.2 of the report, and SEMLEP has actually commissioned Lichfield to develop a series of economic scenarios, and officers at the partner councils, particularly on the economic development side, are involved in the work that Lichfield is undertaking for SEMLEP. As 3.3 of the report sets out, the prospectus provides an overarching economic narrative for North Northamptonshire, and you will see the benefit of having this clear economic narrative at 3.6 of the report, as it highlights the funding that was awarded in the Getting Building Fund, and the projects that have been successful in that. 3.6 of the report also sets out that work is underway on an ARC economic prospectus, and the North Northampton prospectus that you're being asked to endorse will inform our input into this work. And in conclusion, at para 4.1 of the report, the future revisions of the prospectus will incorporate measures to address the economic shock created by the COVID-19 pandemic. But we certainly consider that there's significant value in publishing the prospectus in the meantime to ensure that clear economic narrative provided within the document can be used in discussions with the government and agencies in promoting North Northamptonshire. And the recommendation is that the head of the NNJ-PDU recommends that the Joint Planning Committee endorse the economic prospectus in Appendix 1. And happy to take any comments.
Okay, other comments from the floor, please? Anyone wish to make additional comment at this stage? No?
Yes, if you please, Chair.
Thank you.
I will be brief on this occasion, unusually. No, I mean, I think it's excellent. I think it's a good document. I am pleased that it takes account of the economic shock created by COVID, but it does not resile from the point that we actually have to carry on and do business, and maybe that COVID will not be forever. So I think it is important that the prospectus is published. I think it's important that the people see it and understand what we're trying to do, because I'm also rather concerned sometimes that we are talking about housing numbers and housing delivery all the time and not on economic opportunities and potential. So I endorse the recommendation. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you very much indeed. If there's no other comments, we'll move.
Councillor Jenny, Chair.
Councillor Jenny, sorry.
Yeah, sorry about this, Chairman. This, to my mind, is an important one. This is already out of date in the fact that Buckinghamshire have withdrawn from the ARC. I would be interested to hear members' comments about what they feel about that, because obviously next time I go to an ARC meeting, I think we will be in a slightly stronger position than we have been in the past. As the chairman of the leaders board said, you can resign from the committee, but you can't come out of the ARC. So I'm not quite sure how the Buckinghamshire system is going to play out as far as we're concerned. But if you look at that map, the strategic context map, what is actually being proposed at the moment is the Bedford to Cambridge corridor again. And
your voice has disappeared from the microphone. If you can come back.
Sorry, I was looking at the map. The Bedford to Cambridge corridor is now becoming more and more isolated, and I believe that we should be fighting for anything on the A14 and connection up to Peterborough as to being more relevant now. And I'd be interested to hear what other members think of that before I go and stick my neck out.
Thank you, Councillor Jenny. Other comments from around the table? Can Andrew make? Oh, Councillor Mercer.
Thank you, Chair. There is going to be a step change, a quantum change, if you like, in the economic structure of southern England. Up until now, it has been completely dominated by the black hole drawing everything in called London, that sucks everything in, and people measure site towns in terms of how fast you can commute to London from them. That is going to start to dissipate. The cost of office space in London is completely obscene. And if you can do the same work or even more working from home, people are going to do it. As I said earlier, I've done calculations that it will roughly halve the office expenses of some companies if they encourage working from home. When that happens, there'll no longer be the pressure to build in the commuter belt, which is effectively what the Oxford-Cambridge arc is. Therefore, I can see that in 5 years' time, we will have a different pressure, a different, if you like, structure of southern England. It will be a different place, much more so than people realise. I don't think most people, virtually anybody, has really got their hands on just what is going to change. I know I don't know where it's going to go. I just know it's going to be dramatic, the change that happens. And I feel David's right. If you're emphasising an old business model, then you're going to get caught out. And to be quite frank, the government and the various LEPs ought to be thinking blue sky, if you like, saying, what can we be doing differently when we don't need to push everybody into a giant grey office block in the centre of London and pay an enormous amount to have them travel into London every day, spend 4 or 5 hours just wasted in transport times when they could actually be productive. The companies that do think that way and do restructure will be the ones that succeed. So even the ones who persist in asking their staff to spend 4 hours a day commuting will eventually be driven out of the market by more competitive newcomers that don't work that way. And it is going to change the economic model of southern England. And we should be trying to encompass that, see where it's going, and go in the direction of travel.
Thank you, Councillor Mercer. I'm going to move straight.
Councillor Scarborough, Chair.
I was going to move straight through to the recommendation.
Thank you.
Councillor
Thank you, Chair.
We'll allow you to talk.
Thank you. I was just really wanting to answer Councillor Jenny's question. My answer is carrying on doing what you're doing, David. It's absolutely right. This has been a constant battle in respect of the ARC, again, going back a long way. Buckinghamshire have always been slightly unwilling participants, not least because of their constraints around infrastructure. Cambridge has always been overheating, which does create opportunities for us, but only if people are prepared to listen to us. So I think your argument for fighting the reductionism of ARC thinking to the Bedford-Cambridge corridor is absolutely impeccable. And I would strongly suggest you carry on doing it to the best of your abilities, sir. Thank you.
I think you've got an endorsement, David, to continue fighting the good fight. And now I am going to move straight on to the recommendation because we need to vote on it. The head of NNJPDU recommends that the Joint Planning Committee endorse the North Northamptonshire Economic Prospectus, which is in Appendix 1. Can we go straight through to the vote after I've got a proposer and a seconder?
I'm happy to propose, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Jenny. Seconder?
I'll second it, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Brackenbury.
Right, to the vote, Chair. Councillor Mike Tebbett.
For.
Councillor Andy Mercer.
For.
Councillor Malcolm Waters.
For.
Councillor Andrew Scarborough.
For.
Councillor David Jenny.
For.
Councillor Jan O'Hara.
For.
Councillor David Brackenbury.
For.
Councillor Tim Allybone.
For.
Councillor Anthony Dady.
For.
Chair, that is unanimous.
Thank you very much indeed. We move straight through then to item number 7, and I think that's Simon again.
It is, thank you, Chair. Yes, it's the purpose of the report is for the Joint Planning Committee to agree the proposed response to the Bedford Local Plan Review Issues and Options Consultation. Section 2 of the report provides the background to the issues paper, and it notes that the Issues and Options Consultation is the first opportunity to help shape the new Bedford Local Plan. Section 3 of the report provides a summary of the key issues that are set out in the Issues and Options paper, and I'm not proposing to take you through that. You'll note at 3.5 of the report that references the potential locations for growth that are set out in the issues paper, and the relevant extracts of this are set out at Appendix 1 of the report, including a summary table of advantages and disadvantages. And it's very important to state that the potential locations for growth that are shown here were included as illustrations and prompts for discussion and do not represent any specific proposals at this time, very much to stimulate the first stage of the plan making process. Section 4 of the report sets out the implications for North Northamptonshire and the proposed response, and officers at East Northants Council, Borough Council of Wellingborough and NCC Highways have inputted into the response. And you'll see at paragraph 4.2 of the response that of most relevance to North Northamptonshire are the potential locations for growth, and particularly the options described in the paper as brown, urban-based growth, and red, new settlement-based growth. The implications and proposed response regarding the urban-based growth option are discussed at paragraphs 4.3 to 4.10 of the report, and we set out in paragraph 4.4 that the issues that we identify in the response should also be fed into the assessment process. Now, paragraph 4.3 of the report explains that the urban-based growth option would include extensions within Bedford Borough that would functionally act as an extension to Rushden. Now, I think it's important, as set out in 4.3, that the scale and location of growth at Rushden is a matter for the update of the Joint Core Strategy through the North Northamptonshire Strategic Plan. But obviously, cross-boundary considerations will need to be progressed with Bedford Borough. So, as was touched on earlier, duty to cooperate is obviously going to be important in this regard. And I think, again, it's important to state, as set out in 4.3 of the report, that the consultation paper makes no reference to a need for North Northamptonshire or other adjoining authorities to take Bedford's growth. And this has not been raised in duty to cooperate discussions to date with Bedford Borough Council. And we set out at 4.7 of the report that we do consider that the respective plan making timetables are sufficiently aligned to ensure that cross-boundary issues can be fully considered through the respective plan making process. At 4.8 of the report, we set out that in considering the future levels and locations of growth at Rushden, alongside the issues that Bedford have identified in the summary table, and the issue of coalescence that's raised in the report, the impact of future growth on the special protection area will also be a key consideration in developing the respective plans. So we've very much flagged this in discussions with Bedford Borough Council to date. 4.9 to 4.10 refer to potential opportunities for a new station at the Wymington Loop and the discussions that Bedford Borough Council have had regarding this. And at 4.10 of the report, we set out that opportunities provided by a deliverable railway station could provide significant benefits for North Northamptonshire. I would obviously be a key consideration in assessing the sustainability of potential growth options to the southwest of Rushden. The other option of particular relevance is the new settlement-based growth option that's discussed at paragraphs 4.11 to 4.12 of the report, and members of the Joint Planning Committee will be familiar that when the previous Bedford local plan was being prepared, the JPC objected to the proposed Colworth Garden Village allocation, and that objection is summarised in para 4.11 of the report. And we consider that the issues that were previously raised by the committee in that representation will remain relevant to any consideration of the Colworth Garden Village site through the local plan review if it is brought forward. And now other issues that we are cross-boundary issues that we are identifying are discussed in paragraphs 4.13 to 4.15 of the report. So in conclusion, we've had positive engagement with Bedford Borough Council, and that work is ongoing. At 5.3, it's important to recognise the issues paper is the first stage of the local plan process, and that it is seeking feedback on issues and a range of spatial options, and that the scale and location of growth at Rushden is a matter for the update of the JCS through the Northamptonshire strategic plan, but cross-boundary considerations will need to be progressed with Bedford Borough Council as the plans are developed. And the recommendation is that the Joint Planning Committee agrees the response to the Bedford local plan review issues and options consultation that is set out in section 4, and I provided a brief overview of some of the key elements of that response.
Thank you very much. I think it endorses the view that abolishing the need to cooperate across boundaries is a fundamental error. Are there any members of the committee? Andy Mercer?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Several points occur to me. Obviously, as the County Councillor for Rushden South, which is the boundary to this area that Bedford are talking about developing, I've got a strong concern in it. If you were to walk through part of my division, you'd walk along an urban street, 30 mile an hour, houses on both sides. At one point, someone would turn around and tell you, you're now in Bedford Borough. It would still be part of the existing built-up area of Rushden, as far as most people are concerned, but it's in Bedford Borough. Now, it's very clear that Bedford Borough wish to take this to a much further stage, to a much greater degree. I've got several points about that. First of all, would the houses that are built there count towards Northamptonshire's total, or would they count towards Bedford's total? Now, when Prior's Hall was being proposed, for reasons that I never fully understood, the houses were allocated to Corby, even the ones that were actually inside East Northamptonshire. So this is a pertinent question as to whether or not the houses in the area southwest of Rushden would count towards our total or theirs. Next point is, at some point, will there be a boundary review and the whole urban area grouped together in the same local authority, or will we end up with a fairly large town that is effectively split between two different regions, let alone local authority areas? Final point, will there be Section 106 funding or any sort of infrastructure funding from this development towards the town centre that it's going to hang off? Because effectively, Bedford are proposing an SUE to Rushden that is inside southeast England rather than the East Midlands and is inside Bedford Borough. I don't have any intrinsic objection in principle to the development in that direction. If you actually go and look at the area, it seems a reasonable thing to do, but it must be on the understanding that the benefits of that development are shared rather than just simply go as council tax to the centre of Bedford.
Thank you, Councillor Mercer. Any other commentary from around the table?
Thank you, Chair. Do you want me to respond to Councillor Mercer now, or do you want me to wait till the end?
No, you can do that.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Mercer. Again, just to emphasise that this is very much the first stage of the Bedford local plan process. So they are looking at potential options. So there's been no decisions made, and like the report sets out, the level of growth at Rushden is very much a matter for the Northamptonshire strategic plan. So they're seeking feedback on the options, and they haven't made any decisions yet. So that's very much the stage of the purpose of this consultation. In terms of housing numbers, there's no definitive rule. Should the respective local plans progress development within the vicinity following the process, that will be a matter for duty to cooperate and through the statement of common ground process that at present we are required to do. So there's no definitive answer that I could give on that yet. I can't answer the boundary review question, and obviously should development come forward through the plan making process or other mechanisms, then the 106 or whatever developer contribution mechanism is in place at this time would be very important to secure the delivery of the necessary infrastructure that may be required.
Thank you, Councillor Brackenbury.
Thank you, Chairman. No, I mean, I actually agree with a lot of what Bedford are trying to do, and far from me be it to put stones in the way of somebody else's local plan. I think many colleagues here tonight know how difficult it is to get a local plan to the stage of delivery. Okay, well, fine. If Bedfordshire are going to do substantial growth in the north of Bedfordshire, which, as Councillor Mercer observes, much of it leans on Rushden while it may geographically be in Bedfordshire, then that is something that does need to be taken into consideration in terms of infrastructure for both counties and in terms of of site setting and place setting, remembering that we have the emerging Rushden Zoo and maybe other development in that area. Moving to the possible potential railway station on the Wymington Loop. Well, of course, the problem about that, ladies and gentlemen, is that the Wymington Loop is a loop. What happens is the Midland Main Line, as it heads from Wellingborough towards London, crosses for Neen, and then one track one track diverges and goes through a tunnel to get over the Sharnbrook summit, and the other two tracks don't diverge. So where the devil you'd build a station that can take into account that, I don't know, because obviously that would be something that needs to be considered. And Irchester, I understand, has already been scoped. So it is important that we cooperate with Bedford. It is important that Bedford takes consideration of our situation as well in their delivery and also in their plan making. So, as you said yourself, Chairman, cross-border stuff is of huge importance, and we do need to work with Bedford to make sure that we are all working and getting the same result. So, thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. We need to agree the recommendation.
You've still got two more, Councillor. You've got Councillor Jenny and Councillor Scarborough.
Councillor Jenny first, then.
Thank you, Chairman. Interesting one, because one of the things that we've always thought of in Rushden is the need for a bypass for the town going west. If Bedford are prepared to build us a road, that would be absolutely great. And if Bedford Borough wish to put an SUE to the southwest of Rushden, that will quite obviously help the economic development of Rushden, which I'm obviously all in favour of. However, the traffic situation on the A6 as it stands at the moment going into Bedford, even in COVID times, will require the A6 to be dualled. And I suspect that will knock that one on the head in terms of viability straight away. So I think there is mileage in checking out what they actually want to do before we sort of jump and say yay or nay. And you know, all the points that Andy Mercer made were absolutely dead right. And it is an interesting development. The Boundary Commission should, quite frankly, move Wilmington into Northamptonshire, and that would then be our problem to solve. But as it stands at the moment, there is a need for consultation across the border, and to my mind, this is a much better solution for the people of this area than the Colwood House development.
Thank you. Councillor Scott, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Strongly endorse comments from East Northants colleagues about the complexities of a Rushton Southwest development, and I think they do need to be reflected fairly thoroughly in our response. But I also take the point that it's a darn sight better than the ridiculous Colwood House development that we had a few years ago. That's certainly true. That wasn't what I wanted to talk about, though. I'm concerned that paras 4.9 and 4.10 on the railway are massively over supportive of the potential new station without any real consideration being given to any potential downsides in respect of our wider concerns about the rail service to Northamptonshire. An extra station for Urchester or Rushton South, Rushton Parkway or whatever we call it, is going to increase journey times substantially to Wellingborough, Kettering and Corby. Our big issues around the Midland Main Line are about service patterns, frequency and speed. The additional station, to my mind, although it may be eventually a net plus, also brings issues for the whole of the North Northamptonshire planning area, not all of which are positive. So I would advise that in any response we put in, we are rather more cautious in our wording in that respect. Also, for what it's worth, I don't think there's a cat in hell's chance that station will ever get built, but never mind.
Thank you, Councillor Scarborough. I'm very conscious of the time. I think we need to move on to
just very quickly, just to pick up on Councillor Scott's point. We did try to reflect, and with colleagues at Wellingborough at the end of paragraph 4.10, the need to consider the wider implications. So we thought that provided a sufficient hook for conversations and discussions as they were moving forward. So we very much tried to flag that whilst there could be a number of positives, the wider impacts needed to be considered.
So we are asked to agree the response to the review that's set out in section 4. And can I please have a proposed from Andrew Mercer? Seconder, please. Councillor O'Hara. And we move straight through to the vote, please, from Anne. I'm voting for.
Right, Councillor Tebbett.
For.
Councillor Mercer.
For.
Councillor Waters.
For.
Councillor Scarborough.
For.
Councillor Jenny.
For.
Councillor Jenny.
For.
Councillor O'Hara.
For.
That was 4.
Councillor Brackenbury.
For.
Councillor Allibone.
For.
Councillor Allibone.
For.
Councillor Dady.
For.
Thank you, Chair. That's unanimous.
Everyone been captured? Yes, including you, Councillor Brackenbury. Yeah.
Indeed, thank you, Chair.
Excellent. The only urgent item that I've got is one that I raised earlier, which I think Andrew will need to come back to us on, and that is the proposition to have a meeting once all of the various comments have been sorted out, so we have more time to debate the issue rather than it be a last minute rush to get something through on the 28th. So with that, Ryder, I'll close this meeting at 9:15. Thank you all for your attendance, and thank all the officers as well for their extremely good, diligent work in bringing this amount of work to us. And I'm sorry, Natalie, that your most recent work has been diverted again. I'm sure we'll get it back on course shortly.